If this message has found its way to you today, perhaps it is because life wants you to hear something meaningful. There is someone who misses you deeply, and they are genuinely looking forward to the moment they can see you again. Let me say that once more. Someone out there carries thoughts of you in their heart and eagerly waits for the day your paths cross once more. There is a person who often looks at the passing days, quietly counting the moments until they can finally be near you. That future meeting is not just another event to them. It is something special, something they have imagined many times. In their mind, that day stands out from all the others, marked with excitement, hope, and anticipation. The feelings they hold for you are sincere and profound. Every morning that begins without your presence and every evening that ends without hearing your voice seems longer than it should. Time moves differently when someone truly matters to the heart. Their longing only grows stronger with each passing day. Picture this for a moment. With every turn of the calendar and every ticking second, their excitement continues to build. Their heart races at the thought of seeing you again. They imagine your expression, your smile, and the surprise that might brighten your face when that long-awaited moment finally arrives. Just thinking about it fills them with happiness. You may ask yourself why this person feels so strongly. The answer lies within the qualities that make you who you are. It is the warmth you bring into the lives of others. It is the honesty carried within your words and the kindness reflected through your actions. These are not small things. They leave lasting impressions, inspiring people in ways you may never fully realize. To this person, your presence is like a guiding light. Even from a distance, you offer comfort and direction. Though miles or circumstances may separate you, that separation has only deepened their appreciation and strengthened their desire to reconnect. They do not simply wish to see you. They long for the chance to share what has been resting in their heart. They want to stand before you, look into your eyes, and express emotions that have remained unspoken for far too long. Your existence means more to them than words can easily capture. In their world, you are not merely one person among many. You are someone truly significant. So prepare yourself for a beautiful moment that may be approaching. Imagine a day filled with happiness, emotion, and meaningful connection. The date they have carried in their mind with such excitement grows closer with every sunrise. They hope to bring you something memorable, perhaps a gesture or surprise that reflects how much they value you. It will not be ordinary in their eyes. Instead, it will hold a sense of wonder and sincerity. Think about the beauty of a rainbow appearing after a heavy storm. Think about unexpected joy arriving in the middle of an ordinary day. That is the feeling they hope to bring into your life. Yet every rainbow is appreciated most by those who have patiently endured difficult weather. So continue moving forward with hope. Trust that good things often arrive when the time is right. Keep your heart open to the love, kindness, and connection that may be making its way toward you. Within this person lives a flood of emotions waiting for the chance to be expressed. Their feelings have grown quietly, like water gathering behind a dam, ready to flow freely once the right moment comes. They look forward to being with you, to sharing what your presence truly means in their life. To them, you represent compassion. You embody sincerity. You remind them that goodness still exists in the world. Your kindness has become a reflection of everything they value most. Perhaps you wonder who this person could be. Maybe it is someone whose spirit naturally connects with yours. It could be a friend from years gone by, someone with whom time and distance created separation but never erased affection. It could even be a person you encountered only briefly, yet whose heart never forgot the impact you made. Some people enter our lives for only a short moment, yet leave impressions that last a lifetime. There are individuals who continue to cherish those memories, holding them close as treasured reminders of genuine connection. Somewhere, someone remembers you with gratitude and warmth, appreciating the role you have played in their journey. Known each other for some time, sharing moments that seemed ordinary on the surface but carried quiet meaning underneath. Laughter exchanged without effort, conversations that felt easy, and silences that didn't feel empty. This is not a stranger to your story. This is someone familiar, someone whose path has already crossed yours in ways you may not have fully understood yet. Perhaps you have already been in the same space without realizing what it meant at the time. Maybe you once sat across from each other, talking over coffee, sharing thoughts about life without knowing how deeply those words would one day matter. Or maybe you stood side by side during a sunset, watching the sky change colors, unaware that the person next to you would become significant in your emotional world. No matter how it happened, there was a connection formed in those small, unplanned moments. And now, that connection is quietly calling itself back into awareness. You may wonder why this feeling seems stronger now. Why does it feel like the desire to meet has suddenly grown? But the truth is, it was never sudden. It developed slowly, like something growing beneath the surface over time. Like a melody that begins softly and gradually becomes something powerful, something impossible to ignore when it reaches its peak. Distance has a way of revealing clarity. When someone is not physically present, the mind begins to notice what it once took for granted. The sound of your voice becomes something they miss. The comfort of your presence becomes something they reflect on more deeply than before. Even the smallest memories begin to carry emotional weight. What they once experienced casually has now become something they value deeply. And in that absence, their feelings have not faded, they have strengthened. This connection between you is not built on dramatic events or extraordinary circumstances. It is built on the quiet, simple human moments that often go unnoticed while they are happening. The kind of moments that seem small at the time, but later become unforgettable. Maybe there was a moment when you were both in the same cafe without realizing it. Two lives moving parallel, unaware of how close they were to intersecting in meaning. One person lost in thought, the other focused on their own world, yet both already part of a story that had not fully revealed itself yet. Or perhaps you crossed paths during a social gathering. A mutual friend brought you into the same space. You exchanged polite smiles, brief conversations, small laughter that didn't seem important then, but now carries a deeper significance in memory. At that time, neither of you fully understood what was being formed beneath the surface of those simple interactions. It could even be something as ordinary as sharing a classroom or working on the same task, sitting in the same environment, discussing assignments, helping each other through challenges, laughing over stress, not realizing that emotional familiarity was quietly building itself in the background. What seemed like routine interaction was actually shaping a bond, and even if it was subtle, even if it went unnoticed, something stayed behind. A feeling, a recognition, a quiet imprint that neither time nor distance has been able to erase. That is why, even now, there is a sense of return in their heart. Not to something new, but to something already known on a deeper level. They are not just thinking about meeting you, they are remembering what it felt like to be near you. And that memory has grown more meaningful with time. What once felt simple now feels rare. What once felt small now feels important. This is why their anticipation continues to build. Not out of sudden emotion, but out of something that has been unfolding quietly, patiently, and consistently over time. A feeling that has matured in silence, waiting for the right moment to be expressed. And as that moment draws closer in their mind, they hold on to the hope that when you finally meet again, or meet for the first time in the way that truly matters, it will feel like something that was always meant to happen. A recognition, a return, a connection that never truly disappeared, only waited to be understood. Through time, a sense of camaraderie and mutual respect has quietly formed between you. Life carried both of you forward in its own rhythm, yet somehow your paths continued to overlap in subtle ways. Not always obvious, not always remembered in detail, but enough to leave traces behind. There were shared laughs that came naturally, passing smiles that required no explanation, and small everyday moments that seemed ordinary at the time but carried more meaning in hindsight. Over time, these fragments began to connect, weaving themselves into something stronger than either of you may have consciously realized. This is how real connections often form, not in grand declarations, but in quiet accumulation, in simple interactions, in familiar energy, in moments that feel light in the moment, but meaningful later when looked back upon. What makes this history between you so unique is its grounding in reality. It is not built on fantasy or illusion, but on genuine human experience. Conversations that felt comfortable, silences that did not feel awkward, gestures of kindness that were exchanged without expectation. These are the elements that have shaped the bond that exists in the background of your story. It may not have been flashy or dramatic, but it was real, and that is exactly what gives it its depth. Now, this person finds themselves at a turning point internally. Something within them has shifted. They can no longer keep what they feel completely contained. The emotions they have carried for some time are becoming harder to hold in silence. There is a growing readiness to move beyond hesitation, beyond uncertainty, and toward expression. It is not impulsive. It is not sudden. It is something that has matured over time, shaped by reflection, memory, and emotional clarity. They are beginning to feel that the time has come to acknowledge what has been quietly building within them. A desire to step forward, a desire to be honest, a desire to connect with you more openly than before. So as this moment draws closer, it becomes important to remember the foundation that already exists between you. The shared past, the familiar encounters, the subtle exchanges that may have seemed insignificant at the time but now feel meaningful when viewed as a whole. These moments are like threads, individually simple, but together forming something strong and connected. A pattern that cannot easily be dismissed or forgotten. A structure built slowly through time, shaping a sense of familiarity and emotional resonance. Take a moment to let that understanding settle, not as expectation, but as reflection. Life often brings people together in ways that only become clear when looked at from a distance. And whatever unfolds next, it carries the weight of everything that has already been lived between you. Nothing about it arrives empty or disconnected. It comes layered with memory, with meaning, with the subtle impressions that time leaves behind even when people try to move forward. There is always something that remains, sometimes quiet, sometimes unspoken, but still present in the background of awareness. Let this awareness bring a sense of calm. Not a restless anticipation, not a need to control outcomes, but a grounded calm that allows things to be seen more clearly. A reminder that meaningful connections are rarely random. They are shaped through experience, timing, emotional recognition, and the inner readiness of both hearts involved. What feels significant is often significant for a reason that goes beyond immediate understanding. It develops through moments that were shared, through emotions that were felt deeply, and through experiences that left an imprint even when they were never fully expressed in words. And sometimes, what feels like a return is simply life allowing two paths to recognize each other again in a deeper, more conscious way. Not as the same versions that once crossed before, but as individuals who have changed, grown, and carried forward the lessons of what was once experienced. There is a difference between repetition and recognition. Repetition keeps you stuck in patterns that do not evolve. Recognition, however, carries awareness. It allows you to see something familiar with new understanding and to feel it without being bound to what it used to be. Time has a way of reshaping perception. What once felt uncertain can later be seen with clarity. What once felt overwhelming can soften into understanding. And what once felt incomplete can begin to make sense in ways that were not possible in the moment it first unfolded. This is how emotional experiences mature, not by disappearing, but by settling into a form that can be understood without tension. So when something reappears in your awareness, whether through thought, memory, or real interaction, it is not always a sign to return to the past. Sometimes it is simply a reflection of how far you have come since then. You are not the same person who first experienced it, and neither is the emotional landscape that surrounds it. Everything carries context now that did not exist before. And that context matters. There is a quiet intelligence in life's timing that cannot always be explained logically. It is not about destiny in a rigid sense, nor about fixed outcomes that must unfold in a certain way. It is more subtle than that. It is about alignment. Moments where understanding becomes possible, where emotional readiness meets reflection, and where what was once unclear is now seen through a more grounded awareness. And in that space, you are invited to observe rather than rush, to feel rather than force interpretation, to allow meaning to unfold naturally instead of trying to define it too quickly. Because when something is truly significant, it does not need to be chased or pushed into place. It reveals itself in layers, through patience, through presence, and through the willingness to stay open without expectation. What has been lived between two people does not simply disappear. It becomes part of the internal narrative each person carries. It shapes how they see, how they respond, and how they understand connection moving forward. Even silence has its own presence. Even distance has its own language. And within that, something continues to exist, not always as action, but as awareness. So if there is a sense of return or recognition or emotional echo, allow it to be seen without pressure. Not everything that re-emerges is asking to be repeated. Some things return only to be understood differently, to be acknowledged without the weight of needing to recreate the past. And sometimes that alone is enough. Because growth changes the meaning of everything it touches. It reshapes how you remember, how you interpret, and how you respond. It allows you to hold memories without being defined by them, to carry history without being confined inside it. What once felt like a closed chapter may not actually reopen as a demand for repetition, but as a quiet reminder of how much you have changed since then. There are moments when something from the past appears again in your awareness, not as a command, but as a reflection. And in that reflection, you are given a choice, not the choice to go backward, but the choice to meet it with a newer version of yourself. A version that does not react from old patterns, but responds from a deeper place of understanding. It is important to recognize that emotional echoes are not always invitations to rebuild what once was. Sometimes they are simply signals that something within you has reached a point of maturity where it can now see the same experience with different eyes. What once felt intense, confusing, or unfinished may now feel softer, more understandable, even if it is not fully resolved in the way you once imagined. And in that shift, something subtle happens. The need for urgency begins to dissolve. The pressure to fix, to answer, to return everything to its original state slowly fades. In its place, there is space. Space to observe, space to breathe, space to let things exist without immediately assigning them a direction or a conclusion. Because not every return carries the same meaning it once did. Time changes emotional weight. Distance reshapes perception. And inner growth quietly rewrites the story you thought was fixed. What you once experienced through emotion alone, you may now see through awareness, patience, and a broader sense of self. There is also something deeply stabilizing in realizing that you do not have to enter every emotional reappearance. You do not have to step into every familiar feeling just because it feels known. Familiarity is not always guidance. Sometimes it is simply memory activating itself, and you are allowed to witness it without being pulled into it. This is where presence becomes important. Not the kind of presence that reacts quickly or tries to interpret everything immediately, but the kind that stays grounded even when something emotionally familiar surfaces. A presence that allows uncertainty to exist without turning it into urgency. A presence that can say, "I see this," without needing to immediately decide what it means for the future. Because the truth is, many emotional experiences are not asking for action. They are asking for awareness. They are asking to be noticed in a way that does not distort them through fear or desire. And when you can meet them like that, something within you becomes steadier. You begin to understand that clarity does not always come from doing more. Sometimes it comes from allowing things to be what they are without interference, without the pressure to reshape them into something more comfortable or more familiar. And in that allowance, there is often a deeper kind of understanding that forms naturally on its own. It also becomes clearer that you are not who you were when certain experiences first entered your life. Even if the memory feels similar, the person holding it now is different. Your emotional responses are shaped by everything you have lived through since then. Your awareness has expanded. Your tolerance for confusion may have shifted. Your understanding of yourself has deepened in ways that are not always immediately visible, but are always present. So when something returns, it is not only the past returning, it is the past meeting a new version of you. And that meeting does not require repetition, it requires recognition. Not recognition that leads you backward, but recognition that shows you how far you have come. There is also a quiet freedom in accepting that some things do not need to be completed in the way you once thought. Not every emotional thread is meant to be tied into a perfect ending. Some threads simply soften over time. They lose their sharpness. They fade into something that no longer demands resolution, only understanding. And when you allow that, you begin to experience life with less resistance. You are no longer trying to force closure where growth has already done its work in a quieter way. You are no longer insisting that every feeling must lead somewhere definitive. Instead, you allow space for experiences to evolve at their own pace, even if that pace does not match expectation. In this space, you can still care without attachment. You can still remember without being pulled back. You can still acknowledge connection without losing your center. And this balance is not something that happens instantly. It is something that strengthens each time you choose awareness over reaction. Sometimes what returns is not a situation, but a feeling. A familiar emotional tone that once shaped a chapter of your life. And even then, the same principle applies. You do not need to become that feeling again. You can recognize it, understand it, and let it pass through your awareness without claiming it as your current state. Because emotional maturity is not about erasing the past. It is about no longer being governed by it. It is about being able to hold complexity without being overwhelmed by it, to see layered experiences without collapsing into them, to remain present even when something inside you briefly echoes something old. And whatever unfolds from here, let it be met with this kind of presence, not urgency, not confusion, not the pressure to assign immediate meaning, but a steady awareness that honors what has been lived while remaining open to what is still becoming. Let there be space for things to be unfinished without feeling incomplete. Let there be room for understanding without forcing interpretation. Let there be calm enough inside you that even emotional echoes can pass through without disruption. Because in the end, what remains most important is not how quickly you resolve what returns, but how clearly you can see yourself while it is returning. And if you can stay with that clarity even briefly, you will notice that much of what once felt heavy no longer holds the same weight. It becomes something you can observe rather than enter, something you can understand rather than relive, something that exists in your awareness without defining your direction. And from that place, you are no longer moving from the past or chasing the future in reaction to it. You are simply here, aware, steady, open, and able to meet whatever comes next without losing the sense of who you are becoming.